The level 1 questions. We had a basic map reading question that was one step, just interpreting the map. There wasn't any more complexity involved. There was a question that required recognizing even numbers, but nothing further than that, no complexity involved. And then the one that had a lot of people stuck, and that stuck me the first time I saw it, was a problem about vertices and diagonals, and how many diagonals are from one vertex in various shapes. That problem actually demonstrates a routine pattern. It's just a basic -3 and -3 pattern. If it were a more complex pattern, it would be a different level, but since it's just n-3, it's a level 1 problem.
You know what? That person is clearly a mathematician, because in any other psychometric thing, it's an extremely complicated problem. To call that a mathematician, to call that, then you got to know what n is.
Well, that's...
I mean, to say that n could be an unknown variable.
Well, the question doesn't talk about n. I brought in n to describe the rule. The question doesn't talk about n. The question just has vertex and diagonal, but it's really just asking if you have a 4-side shape, it's 1 diagonal from the corner. If you have a 5-sided shape, you can do 2 diagonals from the corner. If you have a 6-sided shape, you can do 3 diagonals from 1 corner. If you have a 7-sided shape, how many diagonals can you do? And it's just counting up. So, level 2. Let's take a look at these. Were there any that folks had a question about on the level 2 sheet?
I don't see all of them.
I know one that caused some confusion was the shape, the spatial figuring one. And that's something they have to remember what congruent is, but it also requires them to manipulate the shapes in their mind to mentally turn them. So it's not just a routine, look at this shape, can you see that they are congruent? But it requires you to turn them around in your head. And for that reason, one of the guidelines that Webb gave was that a lot of spatial reasoning questions are at least a level 2, because it requires you to manipulate the image mentally. Thank you. Yeah, I don't often get that compliment, so I will take it. All right, level 3, we had a question about a couple of these. One was number 10, which asks you to look at the drawing. The numbers alongside each column and row are the total of the values of the symbols within each column and row. So you had to then determine what the total of one of the columns would be. This is a level 3 problem because it involves complex reasoning, and you can solve it in a lot of different ways. So the student really has to make a plan as to how they're solving it, and they're making choices about how they're approaching the solution. This other one had a question beside it. It said 2 or 3. It is a level 3. Wayne wanted to enter the number 8375 into his calculator, but he made a mistake and put in 8275 instead. How can he correct himself without erasing the calculator? So again, they're making choices. There are a number of different ways they could do it. And then it asks you to explain. And that's a hallmark of a level 3. Justify, why did you do that? Why could you correct it in this way? So it's not hard math, right? Going from an 8375 to an 8275, a very low-level student could do that. But it requires them to think around the problem and choose how they do it.
You said that's on the calculator?
Say that one more time?
On a calculator?
On the calculator, yeah. Exactly. And then the level 4 ones. Both of these started out in a different place. And that was actually pretty smart on your parts, because you may know about the GED that it does not have any level 4 questions. So you probably assumed that we wouldn't have any. But I threw them in just to trick you. And because I think, even though level 4 questions won't show up on the GED test in any of the subjects, it's still a good level to have your students practice. Because level 4 includes the skills that they use for all the other questions, but then has them take it one step further, which is a skill that they're going to need in real life. So both of these had to do with making plans that involved several different options. They had to do with, this one had to do with game theory, which Webb actually said most game theory problems will end up being level 4 because there's so many permutations, and there's no one right answer. And then this one, you had to plan what the best trade is, what the most fair trade is, and why. And so it involved taking in a lot of different factors into planning. So, how are you guys feeling about depth of knowledge? It's tricky, and I'll send out the resource where I got these problems from. It's really helpful.